Hey, what's up, everybody? BDF 44 coming at you with another video. All right. Well, I accidentally hit the side button on my phone as I was switching my hand, and I think it cut the video off in a good place. To be honest with you, I'm kind of pleased with how it ended, but I figured I'd jump back on and let y'all know that was an accident. I never sign out without telling y'all thank y'all and telling y'all my name, but the whole point of that video was just to kind of jump back into my past. Since I had been digging into my past in terms of trauma, I figured I'd zip a little forward as well into times were a little better, since I'd been thinking about my past earlier today, walking to that courtroom. It brought me back some really tough memories. It took me back to a place I hadn't been in a long time with some of the trauma. And so for me, it's like once you go back in the past like that, you're going to start thinking about other stuff too. You're not going to just relive the worst of it. You're going to start reliving more of it. And so I think that's where the Lord put my mind tonight, rather. It inspired me to kind of just reminisce a little bit for you guys, kind of get a peek into my mind, my memory, and maybe some ways I never really let y'all in. I don't think I've probably talked about stuff like this before, over 400 entries of therapy sessions, plus before the therapy sessions, I had the channel for like 2 years. Who knows what all I talked about? I don't even remember. But for those of you who've only been following me for probably as long as I've been doing these therapy sessions, I don't know that I've talked about this kind of stuff very much. So, yeah, I just want to kind of jump into my own memory. But, at this point, I think I got it all out in the last video. But, if I could just kind of continue a different way. I had a lot of fun with my mom back in the day. We did a lot of activities, have, very much a strong bond that was unbreakable for sure. And one thing that helped mold that bond was the consistency that she placed into our faith, and making sure that I was in church every Sunday for good portions of the time until I got older and just didn't want to go, or until she, there were certain situations where she didn't feel we didn't have a church home. There was a lot of stuff that ultimately got in the way, but early in my development, we were in church every Sunday. And if I were going, to hang out with my dad's side of the family, we was in church every Sunday there too. So it allowed me to have that relationship with God that I've been able to keep confidence in. When everybody you trust believes, it makes it easier, as I talked about yesterday in a video. So that's what I want to say. We had great times going to church in Maranatha, near the Crenshaw Christian Center. That was our church home. And they had the best music, man. Shout out to all of the musicians that used to, work in Billy's band. That was the best music growing up for me to listen to help mold my taste in music. Some of the smooth jazz and the bass line, stuff like that, it came from church, man. Them dudes over there. Shout out to Philip Bailey of Earth, Wind and Fire. He was one of the people that frequented the church a lot. So did Debo. Rest in peace to Debo, Tiny Zeus Lester. He was also at the church. We were acquainted with him too. We knew him as Zeus though. This was before Friday. This was before Friday. Back in the 80s and the early 90s, Zeus would be at the church every Sunday with us. Not like with us, but he'd be around, he'd be a regular, and this is just a real privilege to have grown up in Maranatha, man. I can't tell y'all how warm it was to have a real man of God telling us the word, and I can't express it any other way. I just had a great preacher. We lost Billy Ingram maybe about 12 years ago, something like that, 10 years ago. And I told you the stories many times that he went to my job the night before he passed. The same night he passed, he was at my job, came home and lost his life to a heart attack. But I wasn't there that day. In fact, I think I had quit the job like a couple days before that. There was a lot going on right there, but I think that's how that went, or ended up quitting the job after it didn't work that day. I don't remember, but I was on my way out of that job around that time. And I went to his funeral, and it was really, really surreal, man. That was somebody that was just very instrumental in my development early on, and it was a blessing because it also allowed me to get closer to my uncle early on in life too, because before he moved out of state, that was his church, and he did the sound for them. So all the sound, all the different acoustics, that was my uncle, along with other sound guys, putting that together for the church. So I had ties to the church. It made me feel like a strong guy. Like my uncle does this, that kind of thing. But all in all, it was just it was a warm way to start my life, having that as a church. And yeah, man, a lot of love for Billy Ingram, for sure. Rest in peace. And so this is one of those things where I just look back on my life and I see good and I see bad, but what I do see is a foundation that wasn't riddled in just the trauma that I spoke of earlier. You know what I mean? It wasn't like we didn't have so much good after that. It was just that set me off so bad that I never got back on track. But it wasn't like we just spent all of my childhood miserable and all that. I had so much love in my childhood, it wasn't even funny. It was just that my anxieties and stuff like that, as they started to develop, made it so that my personality changed and I didn't really want to do things. My mom was, we would have did so much more if I would have just stayed the way I was. But as I grew into that chubby kid, not dealing with those traumas and not dealing with those emotions, it just turned me into an introvert, turned me into somebody who was sad, turned me into somebody who didn't really want to do nothing. It turned me into a surly kid. It really did. In that house, I just wasn't nice to my mom after a while. It was like her personality being bubbly and everything, and my downer personality just bumped heads after a while. After I started getting to my adolescence, she was growing older as a lady, as a woman, so she was going through the change as well, and it just did not make a good combination, man. It did not make a good combination. But we got through it somehow. We had some huge blow-ups, some bad times, but the Lakers brought us together. I tell you the truth, we would have the worst blow-ups, and then at 7:30, we'd both sit there in front of that game. By the end of the game, we were good. So I can't tell you how many times the Lakers put out fires in my house. Can't even tell you. But they didn't really come around. We didn't really start watching Lakers till I was about 9, 10 years old. And that was right on time, because that was when when I started thinking I was grown. I guess you could say that was when I started feeling like I had choices to do however I wanted, and that's never going to work in my mama's house. So yeah, man, it was good though. I would have loved to have had my own space though. I think that ultimately wasn't great for me. It might contribute to why I love having my own space now so much, because I never really had it growing up. It would be a room like this with me and my mom in it. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, that was comfortable for me because I didn't know nothing else. But when I finally got my own room, actually being able to develop my own way, then it was like, I don't ever want nobody to even come into this area unless I want them there. And I don't know. It was almost like, again, overcompensating for what otherwise wasn't there. And the privacy. You know what I mean? Literally privacy. Privacy that I didn't really want until I started getting older. You know what I mean? Until I started turning like 10 and 11, then I want to be by myself for reasons that young boys know. It just is what it is. You want to be by yourself. You don't need to be in the same room with two beds next to each other on the floor with your mama. That's a long way to go. And it wasn't the easiest way to go. I just say it like that. It wasn't easy. But we were ultimately able to finally get me over to Dunsmuir, the street that I lived on, and then I had my own room, and the rest worked out from there in regards to that. But for the first 15 years of my life, that's exactly the setup. A room like this, 2 beds on the floor, side to side. You know what I mean? That's what it was. Very comfortable. And so for me, the problem was, because I was that close to my mom, I developed anxieties about her. And we talk about those too, about her health and whether or not she was going to be okay at a given moment. That's what ended up being a problem. That detachment was not there. So it was hard for me to become independent. I didn't really get my own spot till I was like 25. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. So mama's boy through and through. And it's still surreal to me that my worst fears I've already faced in regards to her. That's almost still like not really connecting, because I anticipated the fear of that for as long as I lived. And then when she finally passed, it was like, it was nothing like that, I guess is what you could say. So it was almost like, what the heck, what just happened? It was one of those for me. But I tell you, man, I don't really know how I'm still here. Like, as close as I was and as attached to my mom as I was, if you would have asked me at 17 or 18 years old what I'm going to do when my mom passes, follow her. That's what I would have told you. Follow her. But the Lord made it so that I was in a space by the time she did leave the earth where that was not a choice of mine. But She could not, I couldn't have seen that. I couldn't have seen that any time before it actually happened, put it like that. So I want to send prayers and energies to all the young kids who've lost their mom, who have relationships like this that I'm describing, and then they lose their mom at a young age. I don't know how I would have did that for them. I don't think so. I don't think so, man. So that's what I want to say, man. I was fortunate to have my mom for 30 years. That's still not enough, but that's what I got, and it just was what it was, man. Had to find a way to live without her, and I don't think I figured it out. I don't think I figured it out yet. To be honest with you, I think that's probably a big part of the problem. A lot of the time, the end to my anxiety would be her telling me, let's go somewhere. That's how it would go. Or if, she'd come over my house and drop something off and sit down and chat with me, And that would be my interaction with people when I was going through deep isolation back when I was like 22, 23. I didn't leave the house. There was a time after I got out of high school, I think it was my 22nd year on this earth, where I was home like I am now. All of 22, home. Maybe I left to go out with buddies. That's it. It's true. I remember distinctively sitting on the floor one time, in the dark, about as dark as it is right now. Very comfortable in the dark, always been like that. Doing sit-ups, because I had a crazy sit-up regimen back in the day. Just like I got a crazy squat regimen now, I would do like 600 sit-ups in a matter of an hour back in the day. Crazy stuff for what I was on. But I remember sitting down there one time, high out of my mind. I haven't smoked, I don't know what kind of weed I smoked, but it was something really, really heavy. And I just remember thinking that, I really just wanted to not leave the house. And I'm 22 years old, and I'm thinking about all the different things that 22-year-olds do, and that I'm never going to get this year back again, and how important this year is to me based on just the youth of it all. Understanding that, but never wanting to go anywhere anyway. And that should have been yet another, I guess, tea leaf to show me what was wrong was really, really wrong. You know what I mean? But there was just no understanding of mental health back then. It was just not. Mental health was not a phrase that people even use. Is he crazy? No. All right, then he has behavioral problems. That's the kind of thing. It's like, stop being ornery. Stop being stubborn. Why don't you help yourself? And it just get to a point where it's like, there has to be an answer for that. And we just couldn't find it, and she got frustrated. She gave up, and really, I just kind of fell into the comfort of not going anywhere around that time of my life. She still lived there, but she would work 2 jobs at that time, So I think, yeah, that's exactly how that went. She was working at Target at night. Sometimes she wouldn't get home till like 1. I would already be asleep. So I had the house to myself basically all day, because she worked her other job in the morning. So it's like 22 years old, my head wasn't on straight. I should have been contributing to the rent. I should have been doing all the different things that a grown man does, and I wasn't nowhere near a grown man. So far away from being a grown man, I might as well still been 12 at 22. That's how bad it was for me, as it pertains to how much I was willing to input my responsibilities into the situation. Get your own job, contribute to the rent. That was foreign to me, because she had always taken care of everything and never held me accountable for doing so. And when I did want to know what was going on with the bills, she always tried to keep me from knowing about it, because she thought it would be something that was outside of a child's play. So it's just her way of doing things. But yeah, that wasn't the way for me. I needed to be a part of that stuff, and I need to get in the rhythm of being responsible. And so that's something I'm definitely gonna carry with me going forward if I become a father. You gotta let your kids in on not necessarily all the ins and outs of your finances, but they need to know how to do basic stuff consistently. It has to be worked into their routine, monthly routine. And if you have a kid understanding how to pay bills, they're not gonna have a hard time doing it when they get older. But if you don't teach that kid how to pay bills, believe you me, the troubles will come. And so, yeah, that was the thing. Also, she didn't want me to drive. That really messed with my confidence, because at 16 years old, I was ready to get my license, all this, that, and the third. And she just basically expressed to me, because of what it is I was dealing with behavior-wise, she didn't trust me behind the wheel. I don't think that was a foreign. I don't think that was an irrational thought. It just really didn't help me as it pertains to my confidence, because my confidence was so shot, and my mom didn't believe in me to even drive a car. So my thing was, all right, I guess I can't. It was like she's telling me who I am, and I believe her. I cannot operate a vehicle. And I harbored that understanding probably all the way up till I was like 24 years old. I never got behind the wheel. You know what I mean? It was that kind of thing. I asked my mother to teach me how to drive at 16. She said no, told me why, and I never asked nobody else to, because I wasn't going to defy her. She don't want me behind the wheel. I can't drive. So it was like, that really messed with me, man. That really messed with me, because it tumbled forward to me not having confidence to drive, and ultimately not becoming a driver until I was like 30. And so that was bad. That was all wrong. That's not how I want to do things with my kid there either. But what she assessed was what I think was right. It's just that you gotta know that there's something to that when you tell a kid that he can't do something. Maybe they actually believe you because they don't know who they are, and they expect that you do. So that's a real thing, man. But yeah, it's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of stuff that I look back on. I just say we did the best we could. And whatever mistakes we have, their hindsight is 20/20, not necessarily foresight. We didn't know them better. But I just look back. I feel good about ultimately my entire childhood as a whole. And if you listen to me talk enough, you probably don't get that from me. But I am happy with my childhood. My childhood was a whole lot of love, coupled with a whole lot of coping with early trauma. Early trauma made me cope. But there was never a time when I wasn't trying to cope with that trauma. So it's almost like a default mode. Whatever happiness I had was attached to it. It was just like she said, my light was snuffed out of me when that lady did that. So that light is out at all times. So if there's any happy moments, it's like, of course I'm happy. And I'm also traumatized. It was that kind of thing at all times. So I would have little bits of fits, as I said, anxiety attacks that I described to you guys in several videos back, where I would just trip out, just have issues with perception and what I thought my mom's health would be, or her life would be in that moment. Just coming into the principal's office with tears in my eyes saying I think my mom's dead, or some crazy stuff that I was going through when them anxieties were ferocious. Developing mind of a child, and imagination with this type of brain at that, out of control. You know what I mean? An imagination like this, out of control. And so it was like, man, I was having a hard time with that. With those anxiety attacks and all that stuff, it made for a very it made for me understanding that the trauma that I look back on was always in place. There was never a time when it wasn't, man. It just is what it is. So I think a lot of what we did, me and mom, was about making up for that. I don't know how much of her choices had to do with what had happened there, and how much of it had to do with her own life prior to me being born. I don't know. But I know that we had a loving household that was abnormal in a sense that she was a single woman and never had a man around in that way. And I was a young child living in a room with my mom. So that it wasn't toxic in any way, but it was abnormal in the sense that I think I look at my what I'm comfortable with now and just kind of attribute it to that, I guess what you can say, as to where other people grew up in different environments as young babies and young kids. That was what I had going on at home. Safe, not abusive, nothing like that, but it was just one little room. You know what I mean? No real space to kind of be yourself and figure it out, or me monopolizing the TV, as my mom used to say, while she would try to read a book or something. I'd just sit there and just take over the television. So it was a need for my own space sooner than I got it, I think, and a need for her own space as well, just the same. So looking back on it, I just wish my mom wouldn't have made so many sacrifices on her own personal life. She should have been dating, having a life like that. But I think she was where she wanted to be at that point in her life. as a mom. I think she wanted it like that, but I wanted more for her. And now I look back on it, I still would have liked to have seen her get married rather. But that just wasn't what it was. So I wonder how much of that contributes to where I am. She didn't have me till 38. I'm 39, no kids. I just think I'm kind of walking parallel with her. Hopefully I do have my kid though. But here's what it is. It is what it is, man. It's what I'm used to. That's the bottom line. You get conditioned for certain things, no matter how foreign they may be to somebody else. If it's the only thing you've ever known, believe me, it's gonna be fine for you. And so that's kind of how it was for me, living in a little room with my mom for the first 16 years of my life. And we were close as it gets. Don't get much closer than that. And so I think it was because some of the conversations we had about not being around no more, I think ultimately gave me the ability to ease into what the reality ultimately was after she passed. If it wasn't for some of them conversations, I don't know how I would have handled this. I don't know how at peace I would have been with how I handle what did I do and how I don't go to the gravesite ever. Even though I'm like literally walking distance from the place. By the way that I'll be walking these days, I am walking distance from it. But I just don't ever want to go down there by myself, man. I don't ever want to go down there by myself. And it's just strange like that. It's not like I anticipate crying or wigging out or anything. I just don't see the point. I need somebody else who believes in that to be with me. Otherwise, I just feel it's empty. It's extremely empty. I don't know why I'm like that. I don't know what that is in me that feels that way. But I guess it's because I was so close to my mom alive. I don't want to go to a cold box and just stand in front of it with her name on it, knowing that her body's in there. I can't hug my mom. I can't have her, kiss me on my forehead and all that stuff. It's a miserable existence for me, considering what it's going to be like visiting her grave by myself. It's miserable. And that's kind of how I look at it, man. That's why I haven't been back. I think what gives me peace about that is I told her that before she passed, that I'm not the guy that's going to be going up there. I'm not going to do it. I was like, I'm not. I know I'm not. And I was right. I remember, it's kind of morbid to even think about it, but I remember going with her to the grave spot because she reserved her gravesite when she knew she was sick with cancer, it wasn't going well. She started making preparations. We wanted to be ready. And I remember when she chose her spot, even though when she passed away, the spot wasn't actually built yet. So we had to put her somewhere else until it did get built. Nevertheless, she chose her own spot. I think she chose her own casket. Honestly, I think she did choose her own casket. So it's like, I was with her for a lot of that. I went with her to the grave spot. And then we've sat in the IHOP, not too far away from that place. I don't think it's across the street, but it's like a block over or something like that. We went to the IHOP, sat down and talked about it. You know what I mean? So it's like, those are the conversations that ultimately allow me to be at ease right now with not only her not being here, but also how I handle it. And I just appreciate that grace that she provided me in that way. So yeah, I guess I'm running out of time since, of course, I had to upload the other one. And this one's now only going to be 24 minutes, but I think I got out of it everything I wanted to. And yeah, man, I appreciate everybody listening to me reminisce on my mother and my bad food habits and all the different stuff we talked about today, trauma, going with me down to the courthouse, all of the stuff that you guys have been following me on, struggling with the AMC realization of how bad the position is looking right now based on the corruption in place, all the different things that you guys have been on this journey with me throughout this day. I just want to thank y'all for doing that. And I encourage everybody to go check out some of them old therapy sessions, check out all that old stuff from back in the day when you ever have time, because it will give you a glimpse into the mind of this person. And I've had so much to say over the course of having this channel that I want a lot of people to hear, everybody to hear. So it don't make no sense if you don't go check it out. So that's what I got to say, man. My name is BDF 44. I thank y'all for listening to what's coming out of my mouth. I'm out.